Making connections between high school education and intended industry pathways is a widely documented and highly supported model in every country's secondary education system. So what is pathway learning? And why do I think it's so important we change from the existing model to a new way of thinking in this space? Governments and their education ministries want connections to school and work. If you do an internet search on the topic of pathway learning in education, you'll find a massive array of ministry consultation documents and research papers from many countries. And schools commonly have career guidance teams for whom one of their main roles is to suggest what subjects students take in school so that there's a connection between their learning program and the industry they want to go and work within. The big challenge with this is because students don't know anything about or have any experience with different industries, they're not in a position to make properly informed decisions. So many come to the end of their high school life with no idea of what they want to do next. If you've seen my earlier videos, you'll know that I encourage a shift in the thinking away from connecting school and work and replacing it with connecting school and earnings. In this video, I'll show how the education industry currently approaches pathway learning and compare this to my approach to it. With AI changing the very nature of work and the value of labour, there has never been a more important time to ask these questions. At this point, I must ask if you like what you see from my videos to hit that subscribe button. I have some exciting interviews and industry insights in the pipeline that you won't want to miss. I'm also creating online forum channels on the communications app Slack for education professionals and parents and students to try and help the industry deliver more value. Details on how to join these forums are at the end of this video. So let's look at the pathway model as it currently exists. Education, generally speaking, starts with a primary school foundational approach to learning, and I don't dispute this approach. In fact, as a side note, if anything, I think the more foundational it is, the more value it adds to the student. It's when primary education gets distracted with too many facets or offerings that students get confused and the value of the learning diminishes. However, we're not going to be looking further at primary schooling today. Instead, we're going to look particularly at secondary schooling, which as it currently exists is made up of a range of subjects, which these are topical or skill-based with a very limited or direct connection, or a broad connection at best, to industry. Then when students come out of secondary school, they're faced with two main paths. The first is usually in the form of an apprenticeship, and is more often encouraged for students who are less successful academically. In the apprenticeship path, they are usually paid to learn the skills of a trade, and then when they've graduated from apprentice, they enter into a period where they work for a tradesman, and that is followed going out on their own to deliver the trade or service, which ironically at this point provides only a marginal gain in income or benefit, but includes a significant increase in risk. But from that, they have the opportunity to build into running their own business. The other route is university study. So people leave secondary schools, go to university and study about a topic. There is a key difference here that needs to be pointed out between university pathways that require specific qualifications to be allowed to work in the industry, such as law or medicine, and other ones where you just learn generally about an industry or topic at university. Most students then leave university and go into a career. Now, this is the side that's had the most energy in my lifetime. Certainly when I was at school and throughout my 20 years as a teacher, this is the way most people were directed, and the whole idea of a career was really encouraged. So you leave university, you get a first kind of entry-level job, usually with a pretty minimal pay. If you stick at that, the idea is that in time you'll move into a middle management position, which has a small lift in pay, and out of that, what is seen as the ultimate attainment for the creme de la creme or top people is to move into senior management. Now, what really needs to be highlighted here is that in this path, you are paying to learn, whereas in the apprentice path, you are paid to learn. If we consider whatever action that you take for money you're in the business of doing, then all of this, and this is where I see the majority of the problem in the existing pathway model, you are in the business of selling your time. And in that circumstance, in all of these, you are someone else's leverage. Perhaps if you're working for yourself, selling your time, you could argue it's perhaps neutral leverage. It's not wielding leverage though, because there's nothing you can do to grow your time. We're all limited in the time that we have. Now, I think there's actually more value in this traditional pathway in the apprenticeship model, because it's that one that naturally leads into asset ownership, where you get to wield the leverage. When you're in the business of selling your time, it's important to understand that the labour market does not care how hard you work or how valuable you think you are. The labour market only cares about how they can get you to give more and remunerate you with less. There's no point trying to grizzle about it, saying it shouldn't be like that, because it is like that, and whinging about it is not going to achieve anything. So we have a supply and demand factor to consider here as well. Because so many students have gone into the career model over the last 30 to 40 years, we have a glut on supply. And supply and demand tension will ultimately determine the price. And because you have a glut on supply rather than demand, what we see in this whole area is a suppression of wages and earning. So how would I do it differently? Well, I come back and I go, at the secondary school level, I think the students need industry-based experiential learning. There are a bunch of ways which we can achieve this, which I'll go into later in the video. Now, because you have that industry insight and industry prior knowledge, as you move into the next step, which I see as industry training, whether that's apprenticeship or university, you're moving into an industry you know and you already have an interest in. So you avoid the useless degree scenario that then leads you into a career that has nothing to do with the massive debt you've taken on. You work through your industry training so that most people will hopefully then go and work within that industry. You will likely sell your time for a period. But it's the intent here that I view differently in this model to this model. Because here, selling your time is the end goal, which is why I refer to this model as the pathway to poverty. On this side, you're working within the industry, but what you are looking at doing is actually working with the intent to learn as much as possible, building your personal brand and skill set, and this may have multiple layers such as the career model, entry, middle management, senior management, but we're applying them as a stage only. You are building reputation and insight with the intent as fast as possible to then move into building or purchasing assets to operate in that industry. The big shift here is that you have selling your time as a single stage with the intent to move into selling your products. And that is the significant difference in my model as opposed to the existing model. In fact, even in this business, under the apprenticeship model, you build or purchase an asset, but your product is generally speaking service-driven, labor-driven, and it is still much harder to scale that. If you're going into selling a product or productize your offering, then the scale and scalability of your offering is potentially limitless. So as I said earlier, this side I call the pathway to poverty, especially this one, and this is the path to creating millionaires, decamillionaires, centimillionaires, and the billionaires of tomorrow. This way provides an unfair advantage financially to anyone that participates within it, and is, I believe, the best way to ensure you are also protected against AI redundancy. Now, what are we actually covering at that secondary school level in my model? Well, first, we demonstrate to the students that not all industries are created equal. Overall earnings at an individual level when you are selling your time vary significantly by industry. Plus, you're also looking for the potential for running your own business. And the less potential there is for that, generally speaking, the less I would advise you to enter that industry if you want to one day achieve wealth. We also want to look here and say, what skills do we need to really ensure success for that? And so at this level, we need to be laying the foundations of those skills, which I believe are communications. So rather than just studying a language or the primary language of your country, you're looking at the realm of communications, including media, social media, advertising, communication systems and getting your message across, including personal branding. We're looking at business principles. You're looking at how people within the industry actually make money. What do the wealthy do? You also need to address leadership, in which you're trying to capture team management skills, creating buy-in, optimizing engagement of a team. You also need financial skills, including tax systems and your requirements to work within their parameters, basics of profit and loss, and arguably, I would say one of the most valuable skills a person can have is in marketing and sales, and developing the ability to foster positive relationships and influence others. So let's recap. This, I believe, is the pathway to poverty, because for the most part, it is limited to selling your time, and the one opportunity to move out of that tends to move into service businesses that leverage other people's time. It also is the path that represents the greatest risk of AI redundancy. Why is this model so different? It's because wealth comes when you wield the leverage and you own the assets rather than selling your time. The next question is, how do we incorporate this industry-based experiential learning into the secondary school system? Now, I see three ways we can do this. The first is to deliver the core curriculum through an industry-specific lens. This gives greater meaning and value to the learning, as it is directly applicable to future earnings. But the development of such a curriculum and the technology required to deliver this are far beyond the resourcing of any individual school or teacher. And as this approach is national curriculum specific, it limits the development of globally applicable resources. The second way is to run industry studies as option subjects. Now, this already occurs to some degree, with some of the option subjects available in most national curriculums, but by necessity, this approach is broad due to the traditional classroom teacher-directed learning delivery model and a lack of resourcing that would be required to develop wholly individualized, industry-specific programs of learning. Now, the third way is through a school's co-curricular program. This is a wholly new approach to co-curricular, which is traditionally the realm of arts and sports participation. This is my preferred approach because I think it is more accessible, and this way can generate income even for state schools, as the model falls outside of the curriculum delivery requirements that stem from government funding, and gives total flexibility to students to interchange their learning programs if they decide the industry they've been exploring is not for them and they wish to change. The other key factor in why I like the co-curricular model myself is student buy-in that comes from their decision to participate in it. Marketing experts know that if you present an offering as either a need or a want, people will choose wants every time. We see this already in schools, as in my experience, it is easier for option subject teachers to have better relationships with their students than core subject teachers. And those option subjects generally deal with less behavioural issues. One of the primary reasons for this, when viewed through an understanding of marketing and human psychology, is because students make the decision to opt into option subjects rather than feeling forced into them like they are in core subjects. This leads to a sense of ownership of that decision and an improved attitude towards the subject itself. Teachers who participate in the co-curricular life of a school have even stronger relationships again. Technology has changed the earning paradigm. Industry specialization means schools are not set up to deliver meaningful, valuable learning in a way that adequately prepares students for success. The education industry needs relationships with successful professionals to rethink how we get students from A to Z. This does not mean we stop covering literacy, numeracy, or other key components of learning, but it does mean we rethink the context of learning so that the learning path provides students with industry insight and experience. This then enables those students to make truly informed decisions when they leave school. The old pathway model has teachers appointed relative to teaching subjects, but those teachers don't have the industry experience or knowledge of technology or systems about each industry. Also, it's unreasonable, even if they did have such knowledge or experience, for them to stay current while remaining in the education sector. For this reason, I'm turning to industry leaders to develop programs of learning that give students insight into industry and competitive advantage, or better yet, an unfair advantage when they go into further study. I'm Stephen Morton-Jones, a teacher with more than 20 years experience. I have a master's degree in applied management, and as far as I've been able to determine, I'm the only New Zealander to contribute academically in the field of negotiation theory. I love business, so I've made it my mission to provide tools and resources to allow students to truly excel financially. In pursuit of this mission, I'm forging relationships with leading industry personalities and entrepreneurs. Earlier in this video, I talked about the community forums I'm running. If you are a parent or a student at the secondary school level, or an education professional and would like to be part of the conversation, simply complete the form on the link in the description below the video. Thanks for watching, and remember to teach with passion, learn with hunger, and together, let's advance education.